Is the FIFA Club World Cup worth watching? Let's dig into this one, shall we? Hello, welcome to On My Son podcast, the audio podcast you can find on Spotify, Apple, and also on the On My Son YouTube channel. Go to revelatoralf.com website for all the links there as well. So, the FIFA World Cup, Club World Cup has started in the United States. Is it worth watching? That's the question here. Is it worth watching? Now, I was a little bit resistant to watching this, and I thought it's not something that really interests me. And I haven't actually watched any games all the way through as yet. I just haven't really got that interest in watching it. However, I am definitely watching all the highlights. And just like in the Nations World Cup, these early stages, the group stages, you get huge differences, huge disparity between the top teams and the lesser teams or the lesser nations, right? Usually, the lesser nations, they get beat, or lesser clubs in this case, they get beat very convincingly, and at least they got to the World Cup, right? So this is the kind of thing, there's a lot of criticism about this FIFA Club World Cup as well, and who was promoting it, who was funding it, and if it wasn't for DAZN and if it wasn't for the Saudis putting up the money right at the last minute as well, it wouldn't have had any kind of impetus, and it possibly wouldn't have even gone ahead, and all this kind of stuff. So the clubs have taken this Club World Cup seriously because of the amount of money that's involved, and the amount of money, you could put, if you win the Club World Cup, you could easily afford another couple of players. So that's great for the next season, right? But in terms of the games, I've been watching the highlights, and some of them, like Bayern Munich against was it Auckland City, part-timers, Auckland. I believe, I'm not 100% sure if this is true, but some of their players, 5 or 6 players, couldn't even get the time off work to go and play in the FIFA Club World Cup, right? So they got half of their squad there. They went up against Bayern Munich. You beat them 10-0. I mean, it was just ridiculous. I remember when Germany beat, was it Saudi Arabia or something like that? No, in the Korea and Japan World Cup a few years ago, they beat them 10-0 or something. And it was just, it was pathetic, really. So it's a similar kind of thing. We've had some big scores, but we've had some really competitive games as well. So I think you're getting the really competitive games against the South American teams and the Central American teams, Mexico, that kind of thing, Argentina, Brazil. They've had some really good teams there as well. But we've also had a decent games against some other teams from outside of Europe. Now, but you would think it's either going to be a South American team or it's going to be a European team that's going to win this, some of the big teams. But, they could easily have some upsets here. Especially if they're not really focusing. I did notice that a couple of the teams, let's say from Europe, did put out their second tier team. For some of these early games, and you kind of think, well, if the other team, is that bad, then it shouldn't make any difference. But all of a sudden, you're taking a risk. All of a sudden, that they could be a lot better than you think, and they could create a problem for you. I think Real Madrid against Al Hilal, Saudi team. They come up against a team there that, they were caught with their pants down a little bit there. I mean, it went 1-1 in the end, but it could have easily gone the other way as well. And also, Real Madrid could have won it right to the end. But is it worth watching? And I think that's the problem here. Sometimes, we want football all the time, don't we? We want football, and we want to digest it as much as possible. That's if you're a football fan, of course, right? But there's other times you think you can get a bit of overload in football, and especially when you kind of think, is it really that important? Now, for the clubs and FIFA and everybody else involved in it, they can say, yeah, this is really important. This is really high quality football. But if you're, I'm a West Ham fan, right? I'm more concerned about if we're going to get players for next season. I'm more concerned about what is happening with our club, the structure of our club in terms of management, in terms of ownership, in terms of the deals that go behind the scenes, what the relationship is with the fans, the stadium, all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure every other fan, if you're really dug in with your club, really interested in what goes on behind the scenes, that's what you're really interested in. You're really interested in saying, right, this is a downtime now for the club, and I'm not really interested in watching games per se. I'm just really interested in see what are we going to do as a club to set up for next season. Now, if you are a fan of the teams that are in the FIFA Club World Cup, I suppose you are going to be really interested. But if you're not a fan of any team that isn't involved in this, then for me, I'm just not interested in it, because it doesn't really affect me or my team, or doesn't even affect my prospect for next season as well. I'd say I'm more interested in, what's happening, how deals are being done. Are there any players that we can get? How are we going to set up for next season? Are we going to buy players? What players are we going to keep? What players are we going to sell? How much are we going to sell them for? All that kind of stuff. The Premier League fixtures just came out for next season a couple of days ago as well. So it's, you kind of think, oh, well, are we going to get 3 points there? Can we, what kind of a start to the season we're going to have? That's my mindset. That's what I'm looking at this. So, the FIFA Club World Cup isn't even much of a distraction for me. This is the first time they've had it. They're going to run it every 4 years now, as opposed to the annual thing that would take place in sort of late December, early January, where there's only about 7 or 8 teams. Now there's 32 teams or whatever it is. And a lot of these teams, they're just not even the same level, are they? They're not, they've come in from these lesser competitions, or they've gone through some kind of qualification route to get into the FIFA Club World Cup, and it's just not, it's going to be exactly the same as the World Cup. It's only until the later stages where you get the really big teams with the high quality teams coming together, and that's when you think, wow, this could be a really good game here. Am I interested in terms of finding out the results? Yeah, because I'm a sports nut, I'm a football nut. But am I taking the time to watch these games? Am I taking the time to get up at 1 o'clock in the morning to go and watch, a team? I'm not. I'm definitely not. But am I taking the time to watch the highlights? Yeah, I am. I am taking the time, because it's a 3-minute video. It's a 5-minute video. It takes nothing for me. I can just digest that whilst I'm having a coffee or something. But in terms of sitting around for 90 minutes just watching Botafogo against Benfica or something, I'll be like, what do I care? I don't care. It doesn't really bother me, because it's clubs at the end of the day. And if I've always had this, and maybe you're the same as well. Yes, you'll take a sign of kind of a relative interest in what other clubs are doing, but a lot of it for me is indifference. I just don't really care. It's because it's not my team. As I say, my team, West Ham, we had a terrible season in the league. In fact, we've had 2 or 3 seasons that have been really pretty poor, but this last season was really terrible in terms of performances, in terms of results, in terms of the players that we thought were going to do well, but they weren't doing well. They totally underperformed. The management, the sacking of the manager, the new manager came in that we thought half the fan base weren't really interested. Half the fan base thought, well, give him a go. We thought, and when he first started, that this is Graham Potter. This is that, we can see what they were trying to do, but it wasn't quite working. And it's been a limp-wristed, continuation of the season. You kind of think, right, well, we need to do better now. We need to change. But then you think, if it's the same old nonsense going on behind the scenes, and then you find out, I've got to say, then you find out there's every team has this, or any club has this. It must be a modern way of doing things, but then fans sort of turning on each other and falling out with each other, and fans, it's pretty poor. And then you think, well, I used to do a lot of videos for West Ham in terms of supporter groups, that kind of thing, YouTube channels. But then I pulled away from it, and it wasn't that I was getting anybody coming up to me, a couple of times, quite a few people come up to me, I should say. A few times, a few people will come up to me, I should say, at the games and say hello and all that kind of stuff, and say, hello, Alf, how you doing? That kind of thing. Nobody was ever nasty to me or anything like that. But you kind of do open yourself up to people, coming up to you and doing all sorts of things. And, that's fine by me. That didn't bother me because you stand your ground at the same time. But I was never really saying anything controversial, I don't think. But you never know. But these days, people just feel that they have the right to go and say stuff and write stuff about you and say horrible things about you. You think, what the hell? This is just football at the end of the day. It's just you're a fan. You're expressing your opinion. So it's a similar kind of thing. I'm more interested in the club thing over this Club World Cup. And I think, look, if West Ham were at the Club World Cup, I would definitely be interested in. There's no doubt. But I'd only be watching the games that West Ham be playing. I wouldn't really be watching everything else. I'd probably get highlights, but that's about it. I'd just kind of check how the other teams are doing, but I wouldn't really be that bothered in all fairness to see what Palmeiras are doing, or what Al Hilal are doing, Al Nassr are doing, or something like that, Wydad, or the Irawara Reds, or whatever they're called, because they're not my team. I don't give a monkeys, to be honest with you. But as I say, that's why. Is it worth watching? I suppose. Look, this is down to you. Is it a terrible idea? No, it isn't. I think you've definitely got more teams in it. I think the next FIFA Club World Cup would be a better one, because you wouldn't have teams kind of getting in via the back door, that kind of thing. You'd have more data on teams that have done well in the respective areas, Champions League, in terms of winning it, coming up runners up, that kind of thing. Whereas this year, the likes of Liverpool and Barcelona aren't there, and other teams that have done really well just aren't there. When you get in teams like Auckland and Wydad or whatever, and you think, what are these teams there for? But then again, if it's a World Cup, it has to be representative of the world, and you have to qualify from your area. So you kind of think, well, the likes of Liverpool and Barcelona, they're going to be better than a lot of these teams, but they didn't qualify from their region, so they just got to do better in their local region over the next 4 years. So I think if they get it right for the next Club World Cup, you're going to have bigger teams there, better teams all around, but you're still going to have these lesser teams from around the world. So it's not really going to change that much. But in terms of those games, you're probably going to have better quality games. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the quality is always going to be there. How many World Cups, Nations World Cups, have we seen where we've seen some dire games? And then every now and again, we'll have a World Cup that is just fantastic. Nations going at each other, loads of goals, great passages of play. And I think we've had a few good games already in this FIFA Club World Cup already, and some surprising as well, some surprising games. But the attendances on some of these games hasn't been great on some of them. Others has been completely packed. I think they've been trying to charge a lot of money for these as well. So I think from a TV spectacle, I think it's worked great. From if you're in the United States and you want to go and watch these, I think it's quite expensive for you, especially how much time these people have got off as well over there in terms of holidays. So unless you live in that area where the games are, you might, it might be fine. But if you don't, then that might be quite hard to go and watch these games. So the South American teams, the Central American teams, they're always going to be really well supported. A couple of the American teams, so is it Seattle Sounders and Inter Miami, I'm sure they're going to be well supported if they're playing at home, that is. But anywhere else, I think you're going to struggle to get capacity crowds there. Now, obviously, this is in the group stages, but that happens at World Cups as well, especially the lesser teams. And especially if they're, the World Cup is on the other side of the world. People are not going to pay 10, 20,000 pounds, dollars, shekels, whatever it is, to fly across the world just to watch a game. Some people will, but not in great numbers. So that's the problem. It always happens. This always happens where you get the lesser teams, less supported teams going to these big tournaments. Is it worth watching? As I say, if your team's there, yes, I suppose it is. Is it worth watching when it gets into the next rounds? Yeah, I'm sure it is. It sure will be. Would it be worth watching the finals or the semi-finals? Yeah, I'm sure I will. It really depends how it progresses now. Am I going to just try and catch a big game every now and again? I think if you get the likes of a Real Madrid versus, I don't know, Juventus or something like that, or a big team, then you kind of think, so this might be a decent game to watch, especially if you've got nothing else on. But, if you've got something else on, then you kind of think, well, am I really going to be that bothered? Again, because these aren't my teams. I'm just watching as a neutral. And, right now, sometimes you come to the end of the season and you kind of think, do you know what? Sometimes, I'm done with football for a season. Let me have at least a couple of weeks. Let me just at least have 3 or 4 weeks, a month off, recharge my batteries, then I can get back into watching football again. And sometimes you want to do other things. You want to go on holiday. You want to do other sports, whatever. I love boxing, of course. I love other sorts of sports, motor racing, that kind of thing. But the off season, the end of the season for me has always been about looking at my team in particular. And if you're a supporter of another team, maybe you're exactly the same way for your team, but you're looking at your team and you're thinking, how can we set up for next season? What improvements can be made? And how can we change it? And is there a good chance we could get relegated next season? And what will that mean for us? That kind of thing. I've always said about my team in particular, so like, if we continue to play really that bad, then in terms of football, watching football and fan appreciation, sometimes actually going down into the championship might not be a terrible thing. Financially, it could be a terrible thing, and lots of people think, "Oh, yeah, it's terrible," because you're so blinkered by just only having Premier League football. But in terms of watching good, honest football in a lower league, actually can make it a lot more entertaining for somebody to go and watch their team. Nobody wants to be relegated, and it could be devastating and catastrophic in terms of finances and the health of the club. But sometimes it can work in your favour. Now, in the case of a big team or a team with a big stadium, with a big capacity, then going down the leagues, that people will stop going to watch the games because they're not watching the big games anymore. And especially if there hasn't really been much of a reduction in ticket prices, then all of a sudden your attendance is going to get less and less and less. And that's what happens. So if you drop down to the championship, then, you still might get capacity crowds if you've only got like a 20,000, 30,000 seater stadium. But if you've got a 60,000 seater stadium, then it might be half full. And then you'll really notice it. So you'll really notice it'll be a void. It'll be like you're hearing a pin drop. So that's where I'm at, really. I've got a passing interest in the FIFA Club World Cup right now. I'm looking at the highlights, seeing where the goals are coming from. But am I really that interested? No, because I'm more interested in my own club. I'm more interested in what we're going to do for next season. I'm more interested in see what shenanigans are going on with the ownership, and do we like the owners, or more like, do we not like the owners? What are they doing now that is ruining our club? That kind of thing. That's what I'm really interested in. I'm not really interested in something that's happening around the world that doesn't involve me. That's, and maybe you're the same. Maybe you're the same. I mean, on the face of it, you think, yeah, it is a decent system. It's not going to be every year, only between a few clubs. It's actually going to be, 32 clubs or whatever it is, 24 clubs. See, I'm not even that interested in it. I don't even know how many clubs or how many clubs are involved in this. But yeah, and it's interesting to see some of the bigger teams go up against some of the lesser teams and see how they fare. But that's about it. It's a passing interest. I am really indifferent to it, and I am taking this time to step away from football a little bit. But I'd say my main focus is in my own club. my own club and what's going on there, and all the stories that are not on making the main headlines on the media pages or the sports pages. It's within your own bubble. It's within your own world. If you're a West Ham fan, if you're a Sunderland fan, if you're a Brighton fan, if you're a Wolves fan or whatever it is, you're going to be interested. If you're that kind of fan, you're going to be more interested in what's happening at your club over the summer, and less interested in what's happening in a Club World Cup that you're not featured in on the other side of the world. If you're a Chelsea fan or a Man City fan, yeah, I dare say you'd be really interested in it. But as a fan of a club that's not involved in it, yeah, I'm not interested. Doesn't bother me. Let us know what you think in the comments below. But is the Club World Cup worth watching? Well, I suppose it can be. Some of the games are quite interesting. Some good scoring games. Some competitive games. The clubs are taking it seriously because they need the money as well. It'd be very interesting to see if any of the clubs that are involved in this, do they have any problems in terms of their players, overstretching their players, and how will those players perform next season? Will this have affected their performances for next season? That will be a really interesting thing, because we often see that with clubs that qualify for European competitions, let's say Champions League, for the first time, and their league form really suffers because they can't handle doing both. Their squad isn't big enough to do both competitively, and it could be a similar kind of thing here, that you overstretch the players, and they just and there's a big knock-on effect for next season. As I say, it's a passing interest for me right now, but more interested in my own club. Maybe you're the same. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're definitely well into this. And potentially it could get better. It could get better and better and better. We could have some great games in the next couple of weeks, and it could be fantastic. But to say, it's I would say getting towards the later stages, yeah, that's when you start to pique my interest a little bit more, rightly or wrongly. But anyway, if you're interested in listening to more of these podcasts, I'm sure there'll be more coming. They'll be on Spotify, they'll be on Apple, and also the On My Head Son YouTube channel as well. On My Head Son podcast. It's been a pleasure, and I'll catch you on another podcast coming very soon. Bye now.